Good morning, everybody. Good morning. So, one of the dearest friends I've ever been blessed with in my life is Beth, and she asked me to read this morning. So, I just want to introduce the reading that she asked me to read. It's from the New Testament. It's 1 Corinthians 1:13, which you probably know speaks about love. But I just wanted to preface it with telling you a little bit about the author, who was St. Paul, and he was a Pharisee. He never knew Jesus as a man. He only knew him resurrected, so he speaks about him very differently. And he was also in charge of the early stonings of Christians. So Christ threw him off his horse, blinded him, woke him up. So when he speaks about love, I just wanted you to know who was speaking to you and what his life was and the redemption that he experienced, and the transformation. If I speak in the tongues of men or angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have faith that can move mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and give my body to the hardship that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. And it is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres. Love never fails. But where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. And where there is knowledge, it will pass away. For now we see only a reflection as in a mirror, and then we shall see face to face. And now I know only in part, and then I shall know fully as I am fully known. And now these three things remain: faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love.
Good morning, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here, and I don't know if any of you know my history with this community, but I was actually with Maureen when she first had the idea to create a spiritual community. And the next week, she came with a brochure that had the picture of Emmanuel Hall in Hinsdale, and she said, "This is it. This is the place where it's going to be." And we were part of a Course in Miracles study group back in what we used to call the Birdhouse in Western Springs, and we went over, 4 of us, went over to that little chapel, and we sat in there, and we prayed, and we meditated, and we invited the universe to support the birthing of this new spiritual community. And so I was one of the first midwives for this community. So I feel like it's, a baby that I brought into the world. So it feels really wonderful to be here and to see it grow, knowing that it's still young, but it's beautiful, and I look forward to watching it continue to grow. So today's topic, as I was informed that the topic of the month is the limitless nature of love. And it's one of my favorites. I feel like this is like the superpower of the universe. And so I hope today to impart you with a little bit of something that will make a difference in your daily round, to bring a greater experience of the limitless nature of love and the infinite possibilities that it does bring. I see love as like an inoculation. It's like something that gets injected into every experience that brings a transformational energy. It brings true value and true power into every circumstance. It's alchemical. It moves us from a place of being at the effect of a situation into our creative power and opening to the infinite possibilities in life. And the reading from 1 Corinthians starts with, if I speak in tongues of men and angels but do not have love, I'm only a resounding gong and a clanging cymbal. I'm nothing. I'm just noise. But with love, there's meaning there. And pretty much, it doesn't matter how much you know. It doesn't matter how smart you are. If whatever it is that you're imparting is not imparted with love, it's nothing. And so it is the love that makes everything something. It is the love that is bringing that superpower into every daily experience and into every extraordinary experience as well. And love is not, it's not a physical thing, but it can be experienced in the physical realm, but can also be experienced in its eternal nature. We all have pets or loved ones that have passed away, and we still remember the love, and we can still experience their love. I know for me, my grandmother passed away in 1986, and although her body's not here, I still feel her love with me. And there are still things that happen in the physical world where I'm still experiencing her love. You know, she and my grandfather set about doing things for the next generations to come, and every once in a while my mother will still give me something that, oh, this is from your grandmother, you know, and I'll be like, wow, you know, it's 30 years and my grandmother is still giving me things in the physical realm, even though she's not here, and I still feel her love. But it doesn't have to be physical, you know what I mean. That love is eternal. So I'm hoping that everyone here has had at least one experience of feeling love in their life. Something that has taken them beyond the moment in the physical world and expanded them to something greater. It could be a beautiful vista. It could be music that really touched your heart and soul. It could be a relationship. Anything, you know, that takes you beyond what's going on right here. And one of the most powerful experiences for me was when I had my daughter. So I think these are in the wrong order, so I'm going to go ahead. There it is. When I had my daughter. So she was born in 1991, and this is just a few hours after she was born. And I remember holding her, and my heart just bursting with love, and I never knew this much love was possible. That it was so beyond anything I'd ever known before. It was transformative. And as you know, when you have babies, they do things. They pee, they poop, they puke, they cry, they scream. And if any adult did this to you, you would have nothing to do with them. But a baby, somehow that love, you know, it's very protective for them. It does all those things that poem, that passage said. It is patient, it is kind, and it goes on and on to describe all the things that we might do. And the gift of a baby is that the baby reminds us of our innocence. You know, it takes us back to a place where we're not the circumstances of our life, where we can remember a time of innocence. And I'm going to go back to this one. And this is a quote from Ernest Holmes, and he was the founder of the spiritual psychology that's called Science of Mind. And he says, there is a place within you that has never been hurt, damaged, or endangered, and it is your job to find that place. And so these are those spaces, you know, with the sweet innocence of a baby, in a beautiful vista in nature, where we hear music that transports us. It is our job to be in that place. Because when we're in that place, we do not feel victimized by the circumstances of life. We are empowered. And that is the space where that creative power dwells, when we move ourselves away from the reactivity of daily life, you know, the bills that need to be paid, the laundry that needs to be done, the kid that's sick that needs to be taken care of, and we can remember, there's nothing bothering me here. I'm whole. I am whole. And so this is that place where love grows. In A Course in Miracles, A Course in Miracles says everything is either an expression of love or it is a cry for love. And so we may be giving love or we may be crying for love, but this is when we need to return to this place. That place where we are not hurt, we are not damaged, we're not endangered. And it's our job in those moments when we're crying for love to connect to something that helps us remember our wholeness. And so, that's my daughter, when she's 10 months old. And, you know, being with her as a mom, I remember this every day. You know, it was like feeling love, feeling that innocence, feeling that purity, feeling that joy. For me, that brought me that gift. And before I was a mom, I did not experience it so much in other people. I needed to go to the top of a mountain, go skiing out in, you know, Colorado or Utah or Canada. I needed to be in nature, and it was pretty much the only place I could experience it. But this kind of love transported me. So everybody just take a moment now to think of some way in which they can connect to that in their lives. And then realize that it is something outside of you that is stimulating you to that experience. But what about those spaces and places in life where you're really not feeling the love? The annoying coworker, that family member that pissed you off again, the kid that is just really misbehaving, the bills that need to be paid, the dirty laundry that's piling up, the illness, or the intense ambition to build an empire. Most people are at the effect of those things, and they sort of grumble and groan and mutter their way through. But we can bring love even into those things. So as a parent of an infant, we do that a lot, you know, staying up late with a child that's crying or sick, and you get exhausted, and you get to that place where just this kid just needs to shut up, and feeling that anger and that frustration and understanding how child abuse can actually happen because you feel like you're about to snap, and taking a breath and inviting love into that place and walking away and just settling down, and somehow an energy shows up that wasn't there before to continue to take care of this kid until they're asleep. These are unconscious ways in which love shows up. But for me, I remember kind of getting sick of all the daily round of laundry and just sort of feeling a mechanicalness to it. And so I invited love to be present there. And I had a mantra, and I would say, everything I do with God. Everything I do with love. And so the divine became my partner in everything, whether it was doing dishes or whether it was paying bills or going to work. And I began to invite the infinite creative power of the universe, the infinite wisdom and intelligence that flows through all of life, the inexhaustible source and supply that love is, into every moment. And so my daily round became an act of self-love instead of a drudgery that I had to check off my to-do list. Love is the language in which God speaks to us and in which God asks us to speak to others. And so the human Beth that was limited to the stuff I had to do on my to-do list, that was frantic about meeting my schedule, got this divine boost by welcoming love into the daily round. And not only did I enjoy my day more, I had a lot more energy. I was happier. I was a more pleasant person to be around. So, nature. Here's another quote from Ernest Holmes on love. Love is within us. It cannot be destroyed. It can be ignored. And to the extent that we abandon love, we will feel it has abandoned us. Denying love is our only problem, and embracing it, the only answer. Through the power of love, we can let go of past history and begin again. Love heals, forgives, and makes whole. And so, in my daily round that included love, the day became sacred. It became whole, it became holy. It transported me now. The very same things that I was grumbling and moaning about became beautiful experiences that energized me. And each and every one of us can do that too. And so the consequence of that is, again, I was happier, and my cooking was better, tasted better. Even things like going to the grocery store became a pleasure. I found myself talking to people in the store and laughing instead of like going in, getting everything on my list, getting out, getting it done, check off the list. It was like, shopping's a pleasure. And it made me start to think in my family about my grandfather's legendary milkshakes. He died before I was born, but all of my life growing up, I heard about my grandfather's milkshakes. He was a pharmacist, and they had a soda fountain in the pharmacy, and he would make milkshakes and malts and sundaes. And all of my cousins, my mother, even my dad, who this was not his father, it was his father-in-law, would talk about my grandfather's milkshakes. And when I was growing up, we had one of the milkshake makers in our kitchen, and we would make milkshakes with one of his milkshake makers. And then my father wanted his grandchildren to have the experience of the love that came through a milkshake for his grandchildren. And so he bought a milkshake maker, and he invoked the presence of my grandfather into his space so that he could do that. And now my daughter talks about how, Poppy's milkshakes were the best. And I think about that love came through a lineage. That even though I never met my grandfather, I live with the living experience of the love that came through his milkshakes. Now that's a very different milkshake than just going to the store and transactionally buying a milkshake. That's a milkshake filled with love. So we can all do that. So in community, we're here to share that love with each other. So Ernest Holmes talks about a power for good in the universe, that you can use it. It is this power of love. And for me, love and God are synonymous. They're one and the same. And we can use it on our own behalf. We can use it on behalf of others. And in community and in relationship, truly it becomes sacred when what we do is we extend love and we receive love from each other in the community. And I have a little, where is it? Yes, this is what I'm looking for. I have a little plaque at home, and it says, "A friend is someone who knows the song in your heart and can sing it back to you when you have forgotten the words." And that's the essence of what I see in community, is checking on each other, like, are you good? Are you good? Having others check on us where they're are you good? And extending whatever it is that they need, remembering, oh, you like listening to this music, or you like being out in nature, and just tending to that need to experience that divine love in our lives and supporting each other in it. And one of the most dramatic examples of extending love that I can think of is this really funny story about this aging woman who had lived in her house all of her adult life, and all her children were grown and gone. Her husband was dead, and she was a white woman, and her neighborhood was changing to a black neighborhood. And her children were fearful for her safety. And she said, I will be totally fine here. I live with the presence of love with me in every moment. And as the worst fears would have it for her children, a black man, came to her door and held her up at gunpoint to rob her house. And her response to that was, oh, honey, why would you do that to yourself? You must be really troubled. come in, I'll give you some coffee cake. And this man was like, huh? Like, I'm holding you up. And she goes, I know, and you just wouldn't do that if you were in your right mind. Come sit down, let's have some coffee cake. And so they sat at the table, and he began to pour out his heart's concerns. And he said, I can't believe you did that. And she said, this is what love does. And so she said, and you did come to my house, and you stuck a gun at me, and you tried to rob me, and I do need to call the police, but I will come and I will testify in your behalf, and everything will be okay. And so she did. She called the police. He needed to know there was a consequence for that action, and that love was present even in this. And so when it was all said and done and he was acquitted, he came back to her and he said, you're the most amazing person I've ever met. What can I do to help you? And for the next 30 years, he mowed her lawn and he trimmed her hedges every week, and they became the best of friends until she died. That's what love can do in a relationship and in a community. It's very, very powerful. In my own family, I have a cousin who maybe 35 years ago, maybe longer, I don't remember the exact dates, but he came out that he was gay, and it was troubling to his dad, and it was troubling to my dad, and they both absolutely adored him, my uncle's son and my father's nephew, my cousin. And I remember being like, okay, cool, like whatever. And he wanted to get married, and he and his partner went down to City Hall back when it was not legal, and they would petition to get married, and they decided they were going to get married anyway. And so it was about maybe 33 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, they decided to get married, and they invited everyone in both their families. And I remember talking to my dad a little bit about this, and he said, I love my nephew, and I'm going to go, and I'm going to support him. And he goes, I don't know that I agree with all of his choices in life, but my love is stronger. And every single person in my family showed up at that wedding. And in his partner's family, not one person showed up. And I remember sitting in that chapel in Lincoln Park and being like, wow, my family is filled with so much love, and my cousin was bursting with so much happiness that everyone supported him. And that's what love does in community. It moves beyond our personal preferences and just loves anyway. So what about the big things? The really big things, the lawsuit, the major illness, the divorce, the devastating circumstance. When we are faced with something devastating, we find ourselves often in a position of supplication and beseeching anything that can help us, anything. Inviting love even into those places is also alchemical. It can take us from our totally disempowered state into an empowered state where we unify with the creative power of life and allow ideas, answers, inspirations, anything to come to us to move us beyond such painful circumstances. And this is the real essence of the limitless nature of love. It is in the daily round, in the mundane, in the natural, but it is also in those things that seem insurmountable. A simple example of that for me was a very, very painful breakup in a relationship where I could feel myself going to hatred, like real hatred, the kind of hatred that becomes a personal hell. And I could feel myself shutting down to life and not wanting to be a part of anything. And so I had asked love to help me before, and so I did again. And as I prayed in my closed state, not wanting to really see or talk to anybody, I was guided to a song that was playing when you all walked in today, and it's called I Choose Love. by an artist named Sean Galloway, who's now a really good friend of mine. And I didn't know him at all at the time that this happened. But I heard that song, and it talks about just choosing love. And in any state or any situation, and it can be played again later so you can hear it. But as I listened to that song over and over and over and over every day for weeks on end, for a couple months, that hatred began to melt away. And I returned again to a place of love. And so that choice to go to God, to remember the love that God is, and that place within me that had never been hurt, that had never been harmed, that had never been endangered or damaged in any way, and invite love there. Transform me back to a place of choice again. It was self-honoring, and all self-honoring choices are richly rewarded. That's how the universe works. It was healing, and it enabled me to get past that time. So another, even more powerful example of that is this little girl. Her name is Kim Phuc, and this is a famous and haunting Vietnam War photo. She was 9 years old. Her village had been napalm bombed by mistake. And she was running, screaming in Vietnamese, too hot, because her back was completely burned. She had third-degree burns covering her entire backside. And the photographer that took this picture is named Nick Utt. And after he took this picture, he took her to the hospital. And he found that love within him that said, I must take her to the hospital before I hand in these photos as a photojournalist. And in the hospital, she stayed for 14 months, had 17 surgeries, and survived. And most people that have that severe kind of burn over more than 10% of their body usually die. And I've treated burn patients. I have worked with them, and it is an agonizing process. And so she survived. Now she has every reason to go to hatred, to go to condemnation, to go to judgment, to go to victimhood, to go to whatever, to just not even want to be here anymore. But that's not what she did. This little girl chose to love herself. And she chose in every moment to see past the war, to see past what was going on in her country, to see past what was going on in her body. She eventually moved to Canada. She became a Canadian citizen. She's an author. She's a UNESCO Goodwill Ambassador. And this is what she has to say. Forgiveness made me free from hatred. I still have many scars on my body and severe pain most days, but my heart is cleansed. Napalm is very powerful, but faith, forgiveness, and love are more powerful. We would not have war at all if everyone could learn how to live with true love, hope, and forgiveness. And if that little girl in that picture can do it, ask yourself, can you? What she also has to say is, I'm not involved in politics or religion. I just let them know it's about the love of God and the love of people. That's more powerful than any weapon of war. So that's Kim Phuc. She experienced massive pain, but she did not experience suffering, because she brought this power into her life. That's what love does. And so she married. She has 2 children. She's this goodwill ambassador in the world. She did not abandon love. She kept love present in her life, remembering it in the midst of war, in the midst of massive physical pain, in the midst of losing family members. She could have just as easily chosen something else, but she chose love. So I invite you to bring this love into any challenge in your life. It brings infinite possibilities. Could she ever have imagined running with a burned back after her village being napalmed, that she could be a goodwill ambassador for the world, and that she could have a happy family life and beautiful children? I imagine that that was not a possibility that was available to her, but that's what happens when you bring love in. Infinite possibilities open up. So lastly, I'd like to share about one other experience, which I'm sure many of you know about this, which is about the experience of Dr. Hugh Len, who brings the practice of Ho'oponopono, which is a Hawaiian forgiveness practice. He brought it to his work, where he was a doctor at a locked ward psychiatric hospital in Hawaii. It was a state hospital. And they had violent criminals, murderers, rapists that were in this ward. And the hospital was having a hard time keeping staff because it was a pretty miserable place to work. And Dr. Hugh Len was offered the job, and he said, I'll do it if I can do it my way. And so what he did is he brought to this hospital and to each of the people in this locked ward Ho'oponopono, which is a simple practice of stating 4 phrases, which are, I love you, I'm so sorry, please forgive me, thank you. But it's so much more than that, because what he did is he took these charts that had all of the things, the crimes that all these people had committed, and all of the diagnoses of whatever their mental disorders were that had them there. And he invoked the presence of love. I love you. And then he said, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that you were ever perceived as anything other than whole, perfect, a divine child of God. Please forgive me. Please forgive everyone that has ever perceived you as anything other than whole, perfect. Thank you. And he prayed this prayer over the charts. He didn't even meet with the people for months. But the energy in that place changed because he invited love to be present with each of these people where they were in the locked ward, and he became someone that they trusted. And what ended up happening is everything settled down, and each of these patients became more cooperative. They started having more privileges. They started responding to the treatments. The staff turnover became less, and in about, I believe it's 2 years, all of these patients were discharged, and they ended up closing that ward. And so this is a power that is so practical, you know. It took a very dangerous situation, and it turned it around by inviting love to be with the entire situation. So the situations that are so disempowering become the very things that ask us to connect to something more, and that's when we invite love to walk with us. That's what happened with Kim Fook. That's what happened with Hugh Len. That's what happened with me. That's what can happen with each and every one of us. And so I invite you to really get to know what helps you connect to that. It doesn't really matter what it is, what your practice is, whether it's praying or meditating or walking in nature or listening to music. It's just to get there. It's just to get to that place within yourself where you have never been hurt or damaged or endangered, and remember the wholeness that you are, and invite love to walk with you through whatever it is that's occurring in life, and to invite it into your life for yourself, and to invite it into every relationship, to invite it into every community, and to invite it into even how you perceive the world and what's going on in the world around, because there's lots of things that could use a dose of love right now. Thank you.
You're talking about your your baby made me think of this song, which I co-wrote with Zach Smith, my partner in the Macrodots, and he had written these chorus words about his daughter, but he didn't tell me, he just gave me the chorus, and then I wrote this love song around it, which was about Rachel, and but then when we had Shri Rose, the whole song changed for me. So it's called Beautiful Girl.
Arms intertwined, two hearts full of love are bursting. Stars are shining down upon us little earthlings. The morning comes, kissed by a golden sun, and when we wake up from our dream, it's my hope that everything is as it seems, with eyes closed. Such a simple thing, like love is always waiting for us. In the still of the night, in an orb of light, we are floating. Above us, angels are circling, below us, embers smoking. When we return from space, I kiss your pillow face, and when we wake up from our dream, it's my hope that everything is as it seems, with eyes closed. And such a simple thing, like love is always waiting for us, waiting for us. And may every day be blessed with another better And when we wake up from our dream, it's my hope everything is as it seems, with eyes closed. Such a simple thing, like love. Such a simple thing, like love is always waiting for us, waiting for us. Ooh, waiting,
Ace.